Ltown. Well, the formal name is Londonderry, but the high school kids call it Ltown, and I kind of like that name. Londonderry, Ltown, is located at latitude 42.51, longitude 71.30, elevation 441 feet above sea level, population last count over 22,000. It is located in New Hampshire, in the United States, in the world, in the universe, and as Thornton Wilder once put it, in the mind of God. This is my own part of Londonderry, Scoby Pond. I live right there. Kinda idyllic, isn't it? Scoby Pond is an oversized puddle dropped into a rock cavity which was formed by retreating glaciers a couple of million years ago. It's hard to imagine that there were once 2 miles of ice right over my head. Makes me shiver just thinking about it. This, as I say, is Londonderry, but it's only a small sample of Londonderry. It's my part of Londonderry, but geographically it is separate from the rest of the town. You see, there used to be a road from Derry to Manchester that passed right here through Londonderry, but the years have taken their toll and it has fallen into disuse. It has been replaced by Route 28. Now, a half mile of dirt road in the opposite direction takes me into Derry. So when I leave my house, unless I walk, ski, or crawl, I go to Derry. Which is all to say that I live in Londonderry, have lived here for over 15 years, and have very seldom seen the darn place. That's why I made this video. I decided maybe I ought to take a look and see what's out there. This is my first visit to my hometown. Who knows what I might find? The oldest standing structure in Londonderry is the Town Pound, constructed in 1730. If you were expecting pyramids or castles, I have to apologize. But in its own way, this pound tells as much about life here in those days as those structures did about their own time. I have a rhyme for you. Them pyramids and grand castles were always built by slaves and vassals. Yeah, the pyramids and castles were always built by folks who had been beaten into submission by the army of some vainglorious ruler. This pound, on the other hand, was a cooperative venture. All the farmers in town helped to build it, and the labor was voluntary. And while the pyramids and castles were built to mark the graves of some big-shot pharaoh or king, this pound was where local wandering cows got locked up. Sometimes a cow would just take a notion to wander out and see what the world had to offer. Folks would put her here, and you could pick her up the next time you came to town. You could take your time. No one was going to steal your cow. That's how small-town democracy works. And look at the material. Stone. If you want to understand New Hampshire, you have to understand stone. There is stone everywhere. Stone walls, stone monuments, stone steps, stone markers, curbstones, tombstones, and acres of, you guessed it, more stones. From the riverbeds to the mountainsides, through 1,000 fields, stones. When this pound was constructed, it was on the main road. If we walk a few feet back, we can find that road. Here it is back here. And look along the side. Stone walls. Miles and miles of stone walls. Everywhere you go in New Hampshire, there are stone walls. There were 3 reasons for these stone walls. 1, to mark the boundaries of the land. Good fences make good neighbors, as local poet Robert Frost once said. 2, to clear the fields for planting. And 3, just to have some place to put the darn stones. Think about the folks that built these walls. They were tough. This land was not giving. A mile of rock to a foot of field. They worked hard and they were persistent, and they pulled those stones across the fields one by one and stacked them on these walls stone by stone. If you want to understand the people of New Hampshire, you have to understand stones. Carrying them, moving them, cutting them, fighting them. It wasn't like out west in the so-called breadbasket, where you throw a seed down and corn comes up. Here they had to fight for every inch of land. It was tough land, so much that the people got a reputation for being stony themselves. The lives of our forebears are etched in those stones. If you want to understand New Hampshire, you have to understand stones. Live free or die. Anyway, this was the main road till some folks wanted to build a bigger road. A lot of folks laughed at them and said they were going to end up with some mammoth road. And as a matter of fact, they were right. The name stuck, and here it is. Every New Hampshire town worth its salt had its town center. Londonderry was no different. Of course, ours was unique, same as every other. We had a town hall, a common, a grange perhaps, and of course churches. The common, as its name implies, a common area, used for everything from grazing cows to the children's playground, from town gossip center to training ground for the local militia. Most New Hampshire commons look pretty much alike, with a bandstand, war memorials, and the ubiquitous cannon. In order to get to the heart of the common, you have to see with more than your eyes. It was at the bandstand on the 4th of July that great celebrations were held. There were flags and costumes, the sweet smell of fresh-baked pies and cookies, sounds of music and laughter, firecrackers everywhere. Visiting speakers would exhort the local boys with enthusiastic calls to patriotism. In 1861, on a field nearby, Mrs. Sarah Crowell spoke eloquently. Our fathers, she said, fought not for fame, but for freedom, not for ambition, but for love of country. This gathering here today tells us that old, honored Londonderry is still awake. Surely as ever war was raged or battles fought in a righteous cause, it is ours. The local boys, tired of pushing plows or milking cows, bored with small-town life, joined arms, shouted patriotic slogans, and went to the town hall to enlist. They marched off to war, there to face the mouth of the cannon, the noise, the confusion. There were screams of terror. Chaos reigned upon them as they saw their brothers die in pools of crimson, and times they too would call out a last, "Mother!" and fall silent. Their bodies were buried on the field of battle, and here at home, their names were memorialized on these stone tablets. The Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the World War, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. These were to be the farmers, cobblers, blacksmiths, lawyers, doctors, writers, senators, fathers, husbands, but they were all gone. What dreams could they have fulfilled? What songs could they have sung? The grandest of all monuments in these towns is always the one that commemorates the Civil War. It was that war in which the most American boys were lost. Worse still, on both sides of the battle line, there were American boys lost. As Pogo so famously put it, we have met the enemy and he is us. It was probably someone with a warped sense of humor who placed the cannon so that it was aiming directly at the town hall. Actually, the old town hall is now a Lions Club. City government moved from this spot years ago. It is not the most attractive of town hall buildings anyway. The Grange movement was started in 1867 as a lobbying group for rural America. The Londonderry Grange is only number 44, so is a very early member. One can imagine quilting bees, bean suppers, and long discussions of farming secrets within. The cedar-shingled building has weathered nicely over the years, and look at the stone foundation. And finally, of course, there were always churches. The United Methodist Church was built in 1856. More interesting is the Londonderry Presbyterian Church, which was built in 1837, though its roots go back to the original Presbyterians who founded Nutfield, as the area was originally called, in 1719. The church was a pivotal center in early life. It was the cultural, social, and religious center of the community. It was the church that baptized you as an infant, married you as an adult, and finally buried you. The oldest burying ground in Londonderry is the Valley Cemetery, established in 1793. As with all else we've seen through our journey, the cemetery informs us about the lives of the people who populate it. Look at the basic design. There is a main path down the center, and on either side the tombstones line up neatly facing that path. There is no nonconformity in this society, even in death. These aged stones mark the lives of hard-working farmers, their wives, and often their children, of folks who loved and married, who danced and baked pies, who cleared fields and prayed for rain, who raised cows and chickens and kids, who lived through days of laughter and months of sorrow. These monuments were simple and understated, etched with the symbols of eternal life. They are plain, like the people themselves. It was only later in the 1800s that people began using tombstones to glorify their names. Many of these stones have fallen into disrepair, while others have been worn beyond readability. What we can read tells us about their lives. Mostly, they were short. Look at the ages that death has listed on the stones. 47, 42, 36, 29 years and 30 days. Someone was counting. 30, a pious friend, a partner dear. 4, I am a little angel now. And this one could bring water to your eyes. In memory of 6 children of Mr. Samuel and Jane Gregg, who died between 1815 and 1822. The oldest did not exceed 10 months. But there were others, the strong ones who lived full lives. Ginger Harvey died April 30th, 1865, at nearly 100 years. To die is vain. The stones are marked with simple epitaphs, echoing the simplicity of the people. Reader, behold, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me. Or the simple statement, heaven is her home. And look at these 2 graves. 2 people put to rest together, to be known eternally, only as mother and father. Ah, humanity. All these lives, all the history. History, you see, is not about generals and admirals. It is not about kings and emperors. History is about people like you and me, living their lives in the best way they know how. In order to keep track of that history, we need a museum. Yes, Londonderry has a museum. There it is, the Morrison House Museum. Oh, I know it isn't as big as the Guggenheim, but I think it's just as beautiful. And I don't think you can match the texture of this wall with any canvas you will find hanging on the walls of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And its surroundings, well, they're as pretty as you'll find anywhere. Since the Londonderry Historic Society, which runs the museum, is entirely voluntary, the museum is seldom open. The first time I visited there, I had to peek through the window. When I returned early on a Monday morning, a few of them were rebuilding the blacksmith shop. In addition to the Morrison house, the Historic Society has an old barn and a blacksmith shop, both of which have been rebuilt from original beams. All the buildings have been moved to this spot from other areas of town. John Morrison was among the original settlers. He came here in 1720 from Northern Ireland to escape the constant strife of war between the native Catholic Irish and his Presbyterian brethren, who had been settled there by the English to help control Northern Ireland. In Ireland, Londonderry was the English name imposed upon the original Irish town of Derry. When Londonderry was divided some years later, the neighboring town, with more recent immigrants of Irish Catholic background, took the old Irish name of Derry. So the house is steeped in history, and so are we. The Morrisons did well for themselves and for the town. They were writers and preachers, professionals. When his grandson, the Reverend William Morrison, died, the parish was billed the following for refreshments for the singers at the funeral: 5 quarts of West India rum, 1 pint of brandy, 1 gallon of cider, 16 pies, 5 pounds of cheese, and 1 bunch of cigars. Total $7.31. There must have been some singing at that funeral. Before I leave the museum, let me mention that the Historic Society has a lot of work to do, and I know they would appreciate your help. Volunteer, and you too will be making history. I have to admit, this video has portrayed a somewhat romanticized view of Londonderry. It's not that I lied, well, not too often, but in video, by just selecting what to show, you make a statement. And there are a lot of things I didn't show you. I didn't show you some of the beautiful things, like the old farmhouses, but I didn't show you the junkyards and trailer courts either. I didn't show you the golf courses and recreation fields, but I also didn't show you the miles and miles of energy-hungry developments on curved roads with cute country names that lead nowhere. They are in the country, but they are not of the country. I didn't show you idyllic country pathways, but I also didn't show you the fast food chains or the big discount stores, all of which send their profits out of town and out of state. I didn't make the odious comparison of what schools used to look like. That's old schoolhouse number 1 and old schoolhouse number 2. And what they look like today. That's the high school. That's where we teach kids to appreciate the beauty in life. But enough negativity. Rather, I thought I would like to finish with something more pleasant. And what could be more pleasant than pumpkins and apples? Funny how apples enter into our culture. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. You're the apple of my eye. Johnny Appleseed. And we all know that Eve ate an apple. For over 100 years, Londonderry has been an apple capital of the world. There are still a number of working orchards in town. Woodmont Orchards ships apples all over the globe. Pass by on a fall day and you will see them packing, washing, and shipping thousands of bushels of apples. One of the best kept secrets in town is that you can still buy a half bushel of what they call their utilities for $5. Cortlands and Macintosh, those wonderful juicy tart apples that grow so well in this cold climate. Utilities? And the price hasn't gone up in 10 years. Sunnycrest Farms have a pretty barn store where you can buy apple pies, cider, and other farm products. Lots of people pick up their Halloween pumpkin from this fertile field. And if you drive down Mammoth Road on a sunny Sunday in October, you might well run into this traffic jam of folks going into Mac's orchards. Lots of them are going into the store. There are apples, flowers, pumpkins, lots of people. Nice thing about Mac's is how they support the community. Day I went there, I bought a raffle ticket for the high school band and an apple pie from the local Girl Scouts. The raffle tickets were $5 and the kid didn't know what the prize was. I didn't win it anyway. The pie was great, and I charged them both to the budget for this video. Mostly folks come to Mac's Orchards to go into the fields where they can pick their own apples and pumpkins. There they are standing in line. Office workers, computer technicians, lawyers, nurses, looking to make some little contact with the land. No, Junior, they don't just pop up on the supermarket shelves. Someone has to pick them. Kids look at a pumpkin and see that horrible jack-o'-lantern screaming from inside to be let out. Mom helps the kids pick their apples and thinks how she'll have to stop by for cinnamon and sugar, all for the sweet odor of apple pie in the oven on a cold fall day. Oh, the glory of a fall day in New Hampshire. Happily, development rights for many of these orchards have been sold to the government and will remain apple orchards into the foreseeable future. But as I always say, art is knowing when to stop. When I started out on this search for Londonderry, I kind of hoped that I would be finding something typical here, something about American small-town life right here in Londonderry. Well, I look back and see that I have shown you in succession mother, flag, and apple pie. So I believe I've been successful. It's time to stop. Let me say goodbye then, and what better way to end a video than to share one of them Ltown utilities with you.
That's good.